Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylist podcast, where we talk all about interiors with interviews with interior stylists, writers and the big names in interiors, from brands and PRs to artists and designers. I also catch up with industry experts in the know and get them to share all their knowledge and advice. There's so much to talk about. I'm your host, Emma Morton-Turner, an interior stylist and a writer with a ton of experience. I set up InsideStylist.com so I could share all that interiors love with you. So don't forget to head on over to the website for not only the show notes from today's episode, but for links to interior stylists, writers and assistants' profiles, and a ton of inspiration. But for now, enjoy the show. Hello, I just wanted to jump on very quickly and do a little pre-podcast intro, because since the podcast has been recorded and the very lovely Karen came to my house and we chatted all about colour and colour psychology and how it affects your home and the colours you use in your home and how the colours you wear affect how you feel. Since that interview, Karen has very kindly offered to come and do a talk on colour with Marianne Shillingford, the creative director of Dulux, at the next Stylish Supper Club. And I can't tell you how excited Emma and I are about this. When you listen to this episode, you'll hear all about Karen's new book, and it's called The Little Book of Colour, and it has completely changed how I see colour. As an interior stylist who's been working with colour for nearly 20 years, it's just changing everything for me. Probably more from a personal point of view than from a work point of view, but no matter where you are in your kind of creative world, I would so strongly recommend you go and get this book, because it is just fascinating, the details and the thinking and the psychology behind it. We're going to talk about it in the podcast, you will hear. But if you want to hear Karen and Marianne chat in person, then head on over to the show notes. There's a link to the Stylish Supper Club, but it's a brunch and it's on the 12th of November. And Emma and I are beside ourselves excited to have, well, I'm personally very excited that I get to chat to both of these fabulous ladies about colour again, but you guys can come and talk too. So have a listen, go and book your tickets, but check out the book for sure. Okay, back to the show. Today's guest has more than enough credentials under her belt to be the best person to talk to about colour psychology. She's a leading international authority in the field, specialising in business brand colour, interiors, healthcare and wellbeing. She studied colour for over 20 years, so she really understands how colour affects us, influences us, and how colour can be used to influence positive behaviour. She's consulted on big name brands including Farrow Ball, Dove, Fiat and Ascot Racecourse. You may have seen her sharing her colour intuition system at Grand Designs Live, sharing her theories at Clerkenwell Design Week, or when she co-curated the series of colour talks at 100% Design. As if that's not enough, she's also a British Interior Institute of Design industry partner and a CPD provider, a former trustee and committee member of the Colour Group of Great Britain, and on the advisory board of the charity Colour Cares. I don't know how you do all that. She's just released The Little Book of Colour, which you might have seen me mentioning a few times on Instagram. How to Use the Psychology of Colour to Transform Your Life by Penguin Life. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Karen Huller. Hello.
Hi there.
That was a really long intro.
That's all right.
Thank you so much for coming. We're in my house, so there's going to be lots of bangs and crashes. There's also a furry Dave sitting here meowing, getting ready to join in, which we've never done before. We've got rid of the dog though, because we know that doesn't go very well. So thank you for coming to my house.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm a real fan of the book.
Oh, great.
I'm just going to, literally, I've already admitted this to Karen, that I haven't finished it because I'm reading it really slowly, because it's so in-depth, and if I read too quickly, I'll miss things, and I don't want to miss anything. So I've been taking notes, and I've got my elastic band around my pages, and I'm taking it in really slowly and writing everything down so I remember it all.
Yeah.
So I might have to get you to share some stuff, but not give away too much.
That's all right.
It's like don't give the ending away.
No. But it's interesting because there's been quite a few people who've read the book and they've not used these words, but basically they've just inhaled the book.
Yeah.
And they've read it really quickly, and then they've all said that they've gone back and now they're reading it for the second time because they just wanted to absorb it all and just take it all in, and now they're going back and they're going slowly, because it is one of these books that I think every time you read it you will get something new because there's so many layers to it, but it's a very easy read.
Yeah, very easy. And my mum always told me never to draw in books. I think that's sacrilege. So I write the notes, but I write the page number next to it, so I know when I want to go back to a certain area, I know exactly where it is. So obviously from that introduction, you are all about colour, but you didn't always work in colour. How did you come to do what you... Actually, I'm going to ask you first, what is your job title?
It's a yes.
Or your
my job.
What do you do?
What do I do? Well, it's a bit of a mouthful. So my area of expertise is applied colour psychology. So I get asked this all the time by journalists, and I say I always call myself an applied colour psychology specialist, because that's really my lane.
Yeah.
That's really where I in all the colour world, that's my inch wide and a mile deep kind of area that I stick to.
Yeah. But you've been working in colour for about 10 years.
Just over 10 years full time.
Yeah. But you were in a completely different field to begin with. So how did you come to be where you are? Where did you start?
Yeah, so gosh, I always say that I don't believe that you pick colour, that colour picks you, and I do think that's what happened with me. But if I look back and try and work out, because people have always said, well, how did you get into it? And I think, all right, I look back in my teens and I go, well, where did this really start? We all loved colour as kids. We all had our fingers in the paint pots and crayons, and there's probably not a kid that doesn't love colour. But I think it was really in my teens. I was one of these teenagers that just did every single art and craft that there was going under the sun. But as soon as I learnt it, it was like, oh, I know that now, and I'd be on to the next thing, and nothing really caught my interest or stuck.
Yeah.
And
because you always wanted to know more.
Yeah, I always wanted to know more, but it was one of these things that, I mean, if you think of decoupage or think of knitting or think of crocheting or macrame or folk art or whatever it was, as soon as I learnt the basics, it didn't hold my attention anymore, and I couldn't really work out why. And I also didn't know that there was actually a thread running through all of those, but I would just go, oh yeah, okay, I get that now. It's not what I want. It's not what I want. It's not what I'm looking for. But I didn't know what that meant. And I did fashion design. I made all of my own clothes as a teenager. And then when I finished school, I just fell into IT. It was what was paying the most money at the time. And my other huge love is traveling. And because it was paying the most, I fell into IT, and I was doing project managing and business analyst. So quite brain thinking orientated. And then it's what I call having two lives. So during the day, I was the analytical business analyst, project manager, and then at night I was studying fashion design and pattern making. And when I had finished that, and this was in Sydney, so in case people don't
there's a little accent going on there.
Up, there's a slight through the nose Sydney accent here. So at night I was studying fashion design and pattern making, and when I finished that, I just thought, this, even though I absolutely loved it, it wasn't it. Now, I didn't know, but I kept on saying, this isn't it. Didn't know what it was. Then I went on and, I haven't done millinery. Why don't I just go and do millinery, because I haven't done that yet. And so I went and did that, and I loved it. And then I went on to do advanced millinery, and I thought, this is something here. And then I was making a duck egg blue felt hat. So I just blocked the hat, and I was putting a beautiful chocolate brown silk ribbon with beautiful big chocolate brown feathers on the hat. And out of nowhere, in front of the whole class, I just went, oh my God, it's colour. So everyone stared at me, and my friends in the class were like, what are you talking about? And I said to them, I don't know. Like, I didn't even know where that came from. Yeah. So me being me, right, so I finished the millinery course, did very well. I mean, I got distinctions, did very well in that, but I knew that wasn't it. So I went off and enrolled in, for a year, what was at the time the Sydney School of Colour and Design, which is now the International School of Colour and Design. And whilst I enjoyed doing that class, it was about the colour wheel, and I pretty much got it in the first lesson or two, but I stuck with it for the rest of the year. But all the questions I was asking, I didn't know what I was asking, but I wanted to know, why is it that I like these colours and not these other ones? Why is it that I love this yellow today but not yesterday? Why do I like this green but the student sitting next to me doesn't like this green? Why do I feel this way about colour? And I didn't know what I was asking for then. I didn't know it even had a name. But when I finished that course, I then went and tried to find every colour teacher I could in Australia, and I was still searching. So then I went abroad, travelling, because I've been to 70 countries.
No, I read that, 70. That's phenomenal.
I know, a bit of a. I love travelling, and I love cultures, and I love, going to seeing different cultures and experiencing different. I think it's probably because my parents are from Europe, and all my family's from Europe, so I had that travel bug, travelling from a small child. So I again was doing colour courses and still not finding what I wanted. And then when I was in the UK, I just happened to see one on a weekend, and I did that course, and every question I had was being answered, and I probably drove this lady completely nuts. Absolutely drove her nuts. And in fact, I've given her quite a bit of an acknowledgement in the book.
So what was she teaching?
Colour psychology.
And was that hadn't been touched on anywhere else?
It had been, but there was nothing. So there were other people that were saying they were doing it, but when I was asking a question, they'd answer it. And when I asked the next question, they'd answer it. And then I would go, how does that relate? So I'd ask the third question. 1 + 1 + 1 did not make 3. There was no depth, there was no logic, there was no rationale. It didn't make sense to me, because when I work, I look for patterns, I look for repeatable patterns, and seeing, well, how does this really interact, and how does this work? So the lady's name was Angela Wright. And so then I went and studied under her for a year, and I had found exactly what I was looking for, and it was called not just colour psychology, but applied colour psychology. And the depth. And drove her nuts, because I am the ultimate wild child, and I have to know everything, not just on surface level. I have to go deep and deep and deep and deeper. And I'm one of these people that if I can break something, I'll try and break it. And and that is science, because science is to prove it wrong, not to prove it right. So it wasn't to find fault, it was to try and see how robust, and that every question I ever had, bringing that into the class and bringing it into my learning so that I could really understand it. I also wondered, well, why am I this kind of person? I can see exactly as I was as a child, and also the fun and the joy and the exploring and the curiosity, because I have this big curious side. It's like, oh, I wonder if I do this, what will happen? I've got those two sides. Which is exactly what applied colour psychology gives me, because it gives the science and the rationale to back up what I was feeling intuitively, what I was feeling instinctively, and what I could see that was happening in the world in the patterns. And I can bring this back to a logic and a reasoning. And so that is why I then thought, this is it. I have finally found it. So I went on then to study interior design to get a more grounding. I went on to study child psychology, because to know the child is to understand the adult, and that to me was the most important thing in psychology. I didn't want to learn 3 years of Freud. That just wasn't the direction I wanted to go in. So that's why I decided not to do a degree in psychology. And so I've created my own system, if you like, building on from, there's Jung, there's Goethe, there's Itten, there's the Bauhaus. It's all of these masters that came beforehand, and I studied all of their work and brought all that together into what I do. So there's a provenance to it. Just doesn't start in the 20th century. It started way back. So that's why I love it, because there's depth and there's grounding. Yeah. And then, of course, it's just sheer fun and delight, isn't it? How can you not get a reaction or be in love with colour? No. So that is, hopefully that's a nutshell. I know it's a bit long, but that's kind of the story, the journey. And then I've just been building on my knowledge ever since. And
how did you turn it into because you are quite unique in what you do. I mean, from what you're saying, you've opened up my world to, there are so many colour courses.
Yeah.
But what you do is very niche.
Yes.
So how do you turn that into a job you can earn a living from and eat?
Yeah, so, gosh, right. Well, so when I started actually doing this full time, it was around about 2006, 2007. First of all, I decided to start this business when the recession hit, which
Best
I had.
Time, apparently.
Yeah, is it? Well, I'll tell you.
Because if you can succeed in a recession, you can succeed any time.
So, yeah, you also need to have a lot of determination and sheer willpower and just guts. So that happened. Also, I had no idea that no one knew what colour psychology was.
Yeah.
So I thought
but you know, even now, I think people don't.
Oh,
not in our industry, but people in general don't really. It's not an everyday term.
No, but it's much more than when I started, because
sure.
I would get and I'm not. This is no lie. When I first started and say, well, what do you do? And I told them, I would get on a daily basis, what the F is that? I don't get that anymore. For probably 9-10 years, I would talk about it, and it was like I was talking into the wind. People would then go and Google it, and then they would find me because I was the only one talking about it. So I worked hard. So I will say that I did put the industry. I put it on the map because.
Well, yeah, because you were talking back then as well. That's early.
Yes. If I'm the only one talking about it, they will find me.
Yeah.
So I didn't realise at the beginning.
So you were almost marketing yourself without even realising it.
I had retrospectively I thought, okay, well, what did I do? Oh, now I understand. But because it's all I've talked about, just this single-minded focus, and it was something different. Now, journalists love a new story. PR companies love a new story, brands, and a new angle. And so I was being picked up a lot so I've had over 100 different press pieces, but the press has always come to me because it's very clear what I do, so they know what I do. Earning money was really hard at the time because people didn't get what I did, or they said, well, we just do this, but we do it intuitively. So I then had to realise that I had to educate again and say, okay, so what if we put the science and the rationale, the logic behind their intuition? Because our clients, and when we used to be able to say, oh, just trust me, here's the colour scheme, just trust me, they're becoming more savvy. So it's I had these conversations of, well, how's that working for you? How is using your intuition? What are your clients now saying? Oh, well, they're asking for us to explain why. Well, come and learn with me or bring me in and I'll be able to explain why. And I'd also created a whole process of how to do the analysis and how to dig deep and have that conversation about colour without mentioning colour, so that we've got a very solid brief. So that when we feed that back to them and we show them what that looks like in colour, there's this correlation, and there is this, there is an alignment, and this, it's what's the word? I can't think of the word. Not connection, but there is a connection between these two, and this alignment between cohesive. Yeah. So it's a cohesive message. So because when we take in colour, we take in the emotion first, and we always see colour before anything else. I realise I'm talking a lot here.
No, it's great. I'm loving it. Keep going.
So we take in colour first, and we're having an emotional connection first. We believe the message on the subconscious level and that emotional message that we are connecting with. Everything else, the words, the shapes, everything else is on the conscious. So we're already having an emotional experience. If that doesn't match then the branding, the packaging, the shapes, the wording, the beautifully crafted words that people normally spend ages on, if these aren't in alignment, we will believe what we feel emotionally. So we'll believe the colours first. And this is where a lot of brands were losing customers, because the customers couldn't see themselves and couldn't relate to, oh, they get me, they understand me, this is for me. By putting this message together and making it cohesive, this is where brands are able to have that one message, so the customer or the potential customer will go, I now understand, and then they can make this decision, this is for me or it's not for me, as opposed to being confused and walking away.
And not understanding that's affecting them. They just don't think it's for them.
Yeah, they just go, I don't get this. I mean, this is obviously all subconscious. I don't get this, and then they just walk away. So
if you've got it all lined up and you can make it so that the subconscious gets it, you're much more likely to buy into that brand or that product.
If that brand is for you, because you still, as the customer, will go, I see what they're doing, but this isn't for me, and I'm really clear. So the potential customer is qualifying themselves in and out. And if someone comes to you then, they're already a warm lead and they're likely to buy because they already see themselves, and it's just for you then to qualify them in or out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of times working with brands and having discussions with brands and explaining to them this is how I work. And so that's how I was getting a lot of my work. My absolute passion is actually working with children, and I tried to get into schools, but there's just no money and it just wasn't happening. And then I was trying to do interior design and interior design side, and there was just too many people saying, oh, we do what Karen does. So that's why I moved into branding, because it was, talking about trying to earn money. It's still all applied colour psychology, but it was trying to find a place that I could get some traction. So when it came to branding and business branding, no one was talking about it from a colour psychology perspective. So that's why I moved into that space, because at least I could get some traction. And then when I did, then the world opened up a lot more, because when people say, oh, I see you do this, can you also do this?
Yes, I was going to say, and also it's relevant to all industries.
Every business is in the colour business, because there's not one business that does not have colour in some way. And I always ask this of my students, my design students. It's one of the questions I always ask them. I said, find a business that doesn't use colour, and no one has been able to do that. Like even religion, even nuns. You know what I mean? People said to me, nuns. I said, well, they wear black and white. Like, they've got habits. There is every industry is in the colour industry. So yeah, that's how I made traction. But always making sure that my core thing was about colour psychology and about how to use colour for positive good. Because as you build your brand, you get clearer on your message, you get clearer on the way that people respond to it and what is needed, and also what is going on in the world. And because I could see this real paradigm shift happening, I manoeuvred my colour story fits perfectly, as in I will only work for brands who use colour for positive good. If someone wants to use colour to manipulate, like my thing is I don't use colour for evil. So there's certain brands I will not work for, or certain types of industries, if they are trying to use colour to manipulate people to get them to buy something that they might not need, or which might be detrimental to them, or creating a detrimental outcome. So I won't work for those industries, because that's not what I want. It's all about health and well-being and positive change.
We should talk about the book.
That's only question 1.
2. We've done 2.
Oh my gosh.
It's all right. Only 9 or 10 more to go. You've actually answered quite a few questions that I had lined up, so you're all right.
Oh, good.
So the book is, well, first of all, congratulations. It's the #1 bestseller and has been since it launched 4 weeks ago.
So that's really thrilled.
Fabulous.
I'm really thrilled.
It's really interesting. Now, I did not expect it to be what it is, and that is why I'm going so slow with it. I've learned so much. I'd read the history of colour, and I found it absolutely fascinating that we only had, you will obviously know, but I can't remember all of the names, but different colours were known, but other colours weren't. So orange wasn't a colour. And then I read that, so oranges came into the country in, was it 1512? And that's when the name orange became an orange colour. Until then it was yellowish orange, or yellowish red, or reddish yellow or something.
Reddish yellow,
And then it was that the robin redbreast was called the robin redbreast because it was red, but they're not. They're orange. But orange wasn't a colour.
And the red fox is orange.
How fascinating. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
And the red bear is orange.
Yeah.
And all the other red animals that are orange.
Yeah, the whole thing. And the purple is the colour of royalty from Romans. And it was all the kind of the history of it. I found that. So I was reading that really slowly. But the things I was learning, and it was that I thought it was going to be, here's how to use colour. And you are this colour. And this is what this colour means. And it was just so much more. And that's why I was very excited to have you on. So the book is more than just about what colours affect what from your kind of your psychology side of it. Who would you say the book is for and who is it not for?
The book was written for everyone. I did want to write a book for the industry.
The industry being...
The design industry.
Fashion.
Interiors, fashion, graphic. Because...
That's hard, isn't
it?
With
the design industry, I was... Even though I teach and I have courses for designers, I was getting a lot of, we know everything about colour, we use it intuitively, we probably wouldn't need a book on that. And I thought, well, what can I do to create, because I know that there is so much valuable information that I wanted to share. So I thought, well, if I write a book for everyone, then I actually create this movement, which I really wanted to be this worldwide global movement. I'll just do it from the bottom up. Ironically, the amount of designers that have bought this book has been nothing short of... I am flabbergasted by their number, and also the inquiries to my colour courses have just gone through the roof.
Because when you read it, you see colour in a different way. And I'll come on to this in a minute, but how I see my home is very different. And I know as I get further in the book, how I see my wardrobe will be very different. Because I have in my head how I use colour. And I do purposefully use colour. I was saying earlier that I basically stopped dyeing my hair 5 years ago. So because I'm quite grey, if I wore black or white or even grey, I felt very drab and quite slow, quite sluggish. But if I wore stronger colours, I felt really good. And there's a couple of colours that I really, really love. And I know that they make me feel better. And that is kind of what you're explaining in the book. That's very basic, obviously. But it affects you in a way that you don't even realise. And I understand it in a much deeper level, having read only half of the book.
Yeah, so the first part of the book, probably the first, I would say third, is just to give some foundational knowledge and just to take people on a journey of colour perception, some colour history, the history of colour psychology, how we see, how we interact with colour. But it was very important for me that this book was written in a way that people felt that their best friend was talking to them. I wanted it to, and for people not to think, oh, Karen's the expert and so she's going to tell me. No, I want to take you on a journey. I was
just going to say, you feel like you're on a journey, and that is why even knowing I was meeting you today, I wasn't going to rush ahead. I was just going to come clean and say I'm halfway through. Because I don't want to skip ahead. And there's like a personality test and there's all sorts of pages to fill in. And I was like, no, I'm not going to jump ahead.
Yeah, so that all comes up. But I wanted to keep it very... and what a lot of interior designers have said to me, they said, there's things that I could never quite understand, or things that were always very complex, but you've said it in a way that is really, really easy to understand without dumbing it down. I've just explained it in a hopefully, which seems to be from the reception of it, is that it's in a very inhalable, very digestible, understandable way. Then the last 2/3 of the book, and this is what makes it quite different, is because I really want people to live the book. I want people to, if they choose, to bring more colour into their life, but in a way that supports them. A lot of books are written, this is the style, this is the way, and there is one way. I want everyone to come out, having read this book, as their unique, or this is about their unique, authentic self. And if there was one message in this book, it's about coming home to self. It's about coming home to who you truly are. not worrying about fashion and fads, not worrying what the neighbours say or what anyone. It is about us all having the courage to show up authentically and to tap into who we really are. Sometimes we have to go quite deep.
Yeah, and that must affect everything. Like, if you are your true self, you're more positive, it will shine through.
It will shine through. Yeah. It's and there's one part here in the book which, if people were to say to me, if there was one kind of sentence or one little small bit of the whole book, and writing this book, I was virtually 3/4 of the way through when I just went, oh my God, this book actually isn't about colour. Because I always knew colour was the vehicle, it was the tool. But writing this, I'm like, well, what's it about? It can't be just about colour. There's got to be something more. And it was about 3/4 of the way through, I went, oh my God, it's about coming home to self. That is what this is about.
Very much.
So reading through this book, you will have learned how to peel back the layers of false self and to reconnect to who you truly are, to what was there all along, right from the very start. Yeah. And that still brings tears to my eyes. Oh my God. Because it really, what it does, it brings us back to our childhood, that innocent person that we were, that true person who we were before we did have all the layers of, you don't do that, that's wrong, you don't be silly, don't do this, don't do, we all, sorry, it's probably a very big thing, shouldn't really be saying that, we all had that, but there was judgments and beliefs and our own perception of what was going on in our world that we may have covered who we were and not always lived from our true self. So that to me really, and that's the last part of the book. So go through self-discovery, find out who, learn more about ourselves, because who doesn't love to do that? And then how we can use colour and apply colour to every part of our lives. So that's the second part of the book that you've still got to read.
That's this week's project.
That's this week.
There's some things I've written here that I'm just going to share I don't want to give too much away from the book. I want people to buy it and enjoy it like I am. But there's some things that I picked up that I wrote, some of the notes that I have to share because I think they're so fascinating. So we all see colour differently, which is what I found fascinating. But the bit about the rods and cones in your eyes, some people can see colour. It was a musician who could hear music but see colour.
Oh, that's synesthesia. I can't never say it properly. Synesthesia.
Yeah, I love that. Dogs don't have as many rods and cones in their eyes as we do, and that's why we know they don't see
one less,
as many
so they
colour.
see, and then there is
a
crayfish that has 16 and they can see like a gazillion colours.
Wow, so they must... Yeah, wow.
So they can see infrared and ultraviolet. Wow. Well, I don't know about infrared, but they can see ultraviolet. Like, it's incredible what they can see. So it's all to do. And then wasn't
there some people have more rods and cones than other people, so they can see more colours than the average person?
Yeah, so there are tetramatics.
Yeah, I want to be one of them.
Yeah. Well, you can't just go and buy it.
I know.
But when we see colour differently, it's because the rods work at night. Mm-hmm. That gives us our night vision. It's the cones that work during the day. And when they say we don't see colour the same way, is because every single one of us, our cones will be working in a unique way, so that we really don't... I don't know if the yellow on this book, if you and I are seeing the same yellow, we both know it as yellow, but are we seeing the same one? Don't know. But people who have colour deficiency, they are just more... It's more obvious that they can't see it. But
we don't know how much people can see more.
More, yeah. So we're all the same. It's just that because that is far more pronounced, therefore we know that that their cones do work differently.
Yeah. I've got a bit of that going on at home. It's a little bit of a problem. So my husband and my daughter don't have great colour. Like, they can look at green and see grey.
So, do you know it's 1 in 200 women? Oh, so really? That's really unusual. That's 1 in 20 men. So that's far more common. But for a female...
It's probably hereditary for her then.
Yeah, I can't remember which line it comes down, whether it's through the male or the female. For some reason I thought it came down the female line, but I can't remember.
I was just going to say, well, I definitely know the difference, but who knows?
Well,
maybe I don't.
But it's all held the way.
I do. I'm just saying that.
But there is a lady in the UK who specialises in colour deficiency, and that's what I'm saying before. That everyone that works in colour, we all stay in our own lane. So mine is colour psychology, where there is another lady who just does colour deficiency, and that is hers. So everyone in the colour world that is a colour specialist, we all have our own little tiny niche, and that keeps us busy for the rest of our life and probably 5 lifetimes.
It's good to know that other people as well, though, because then if you come across someone who is colour deficient, you know who to send them to.
Yes,
it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
Some other things that I thought were really interesting. I've already talked about the robin redbreast, but the traffic lights in Japan are blue instead of green. I thought that was massively interesting. And in Hindi, there's no name for grey, so they wouldn't last very long here. So we talked a little bit about the emotion of colour, but the bit I've got to recently in the book is about the colour harmony.
Right.
So when I read that and I looked, now I didn't do the personality quiz, I just looked at the colours that are broken into their groups, and they're broken into seasons to make it quite easy to understand, I suppose. For people. And I'm sitting in my living room. So my living room, I hate my living room. But I looked around and I thought, this is really interesting. So the colours of spring are quite, they're almost like fun. I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, so with the seasons, so the whole idea of this, it is not, every human being, every one of us, there is an energy of colours that we instinctively relate to because of our own personality, that we instinctively gravitate to. And those colours will have an energy that does speak to our personality. Now, the easiest way for me to describe that, which I did in the book, was the 4 seasons of the year, because every season has an energy. Spring is the energy of new beginnings, new life. It's when all the new animals are being born. It has this very Tigger, very light energy. And the colours that you see at this time of year are all warm yellow base, quite clear, and they're delicate, right? They're not pastels. They have a delicacy to them. When you then move in, I'm just saying this really, really quickly. When you move into summer, the summer energy, again, doesn't always work here in the UK, but it has this heat haze to it. It's this the low light, and it's this hazy light. And so the energy of the colours have that softness, that muted, kind of almost washed out from the sun. And these colours have a certain look to them as well. And most of them are what I would call blue-based cool colours, but with grey.
Yeah.
Right, so there's a lot of grey in the colour. And the person, or should I actually say the person that's attracted to this summer is also a person who has this very serene, calm, gentle, introverted energy. The person who is very much attracted to the spring is very playful. So they have a very external energy, very playful, very light, very childlike energy, because it goes with the colours, with the
Yep.
Then we move into autumn. This is really what we say is nature's last big burst before it goes into hibernation in winter. So when the rust reds come out and the olive greens and that these warm yellow-based colours, but they're very, very rich, and that's because of the amount of black, because black is added into the colour. The people who naturally gravitate to this colour group can be very flamboyant, very fiery, very very earthy, but it's also another very external energy, because the colours are also external. Do you see the correlation?
Yeah.
And then when we move into winter withdraws. Winter goes in underground, it hibernates, and it's either very, very icy, because you think about the icy blues in a frozen lake, or it's very stark and very hard and very linear and very cold, which is the snow and the red berries and the stark trees. The person who has a absolute winter personality type will also have this internal energy, but the way that they carry themselves, there is no sense of drama about them, but they have this innate energy, this innate people can't see what I'm doing, but I'm sitting up very
from your heart, sort of thing, from your stomach.
Yeah, it's this very it's very much like like Elizabeth Taylor. She would walk into the room, the actress,
serene and regal,
and she would command the space. Well, that's a very winter energy. So the colour palette goes with the energy of the year, because it is the colours of the true season, not the colours that we see because we've mashed all the seasons together. There's also a design style that goes with that. The whole energy all matches. So we as human beings will have our primary personality in one of these, but we will also have a secondary personality that goes into the other. And it's how these two match and marry together is who we are uniquely. So,
and can they be separate? Like, could you have a spring and an autumn? Do they go next to each other, sort of thing, in the run of it?
You only use one colour palette, because if you use a mix, that's when you get this disharmony, and that's where you get the colours clashing. So your colour palette. So I'm a spring primary.
100%.
100%. But I have a very, very strong winter. And quite often people thought that my winter was my primary, because your secondary, you can live out of your secondary more. So when I worked in IT, I could not be the bubbly, bouncing around spring, because who would take me seriously? So I actually lived out of my secondary. So people thought I was this I was called the ice queen, the ice maiden. I was considered very hard and unapproachable because I was coming out of my winter side. But doing this work myself and learning this myself and getting out of that industry, which was killing my soul and absolutely destroying who I was, I'm able to balance this now. So I only wear spring colours. Everything around me is all about spring, but what I can do is I can bring the winter design energy in with my spring design. And this is how you bring your two personalities together, and this is what makes it unique, because the blend and the proportion percentage that you use and the way you combine this together, this is how you then show up in what you wear and then what you have in your home. Does that make sense?
It does. So when I was reading, well, actually what I did was I was flicking through and looking at these colours, and I was looking at spring. So spring is, no, I wasn't. I was looking at summer, and I'm sitting in my living room. Now my living room is, apart from one piece of furniture which is from a shoot and desperately has to go, my living room,
it's all greys,
is very grey.
It's very grey.
It's shades of grey. There's some teal in here, and that's one of the bluey colours in that season. And I thought, yep, that's me. I am definitely summer. And then later on, I was in the kitchen and I was doing the personality test, and I came out as autumn, and all the colours in my kitchen were autumn. And I was like, that's really interesting, because I can see myself as both.
Right.
But I couldn't tell you which one was predominant.
Right. Yeah, and one of them might be your primary, and one of them, I mean, because I can't say, but
it's fascinating.
Yeah. Also, because you do have a lot of grey, you may have been influenced by what was going on at the time, which was, you know, and I was going to say 50 Shades of Grey. That is not what it was.
But also,
shades of, you know.
I hate this room. This room is supposed to be decorated, but it's last on the list.
So you hate this room. Well, how do you feel in this room?
But I feel calm in this room.
Right.
Apart from that piece
and
of
why
furniture
do you hate
yellow.
it?
The wallpaper. The wallpaper was done for a makeover, and the wallpaper that was before, I think I'm about to become winter, the wallpaper that was before was black. Right. And I loved that black wallpaper. It was really dramatic and it had such a big impact. And then when I did the makeover, I repainted the whole room, and I've got white wallpaper now with a very pretty kind of, it's too grown up for me.
Is that fleur-de-lis?
Yeah, it's a bit of a fancy fleur-de-lis in silver. And I just find it's not dark enough. I want it to be a lot darker. Whereas in the kitchen, there's a massive painting that's as many bright colours as you can get. All my kitchen chairs are different bright colours. There's an orange archway, which actually is the wrong orange, needs to change. But teal is my favourite colour at the moment. Teal's in the Turk and the...
well, teal...
which is what my curtains are.
Teal is in autumn.
Yeah. And in my living room, I've got... My favourite piece of furniture is a teal sideboard that's in the living room, and the curtains are also teal and have been attacked by Dave quite a lot.
Dave the cat.
Dave the cat. So it's very interesting when you read that and you look around you and you go, oh, actually, and the pictures I quite like. They're almost teal. They're kind of a dark blue and there's a bit of black, and it's just seeing what you do and what you wear and all of that tied in. So I have a question. If I am an autumn, but my husband is a spring, how do you balance that?
So,
can you talk to him for me?
So, if you're going to go with you're an autumn primary and a summer secondary, because this is what you've announced yourself to be. And let's just say your husband is a spring primary, but he's an autumn secondary. You've got
I can play on that.
Yeah, so you've got an autumn colour palette that goes quite light, but still has black in the colours. Spring and autumn, the only difference is that spring has no black in it and autumn has black. So what you can do is you can go right to the lighter end of autumn, which will then be closer to the spring. And then you look at what your secondary is. So therefore you use throughout your house the lighter end of the autumn colour palette. And then because your primary is autumn and your husband's secondary is autumn in this hypothetical scenario, when it comes to doing your design style, is that you can do your design style in the autumn design style. And this is how you bring both together. Now, you might have a room that is just for you, like an office. And so you think, actually, I now want to go dark, use the more vibrant, the more richer, the darker autumn colours. Because you don't need to use black. You can use a colour in the autumn colour palette that gives you what black gives you, but that supports you positively. Because black, because it's not in your colour palette, even though you think it does, it won't support you. And over time, you will feel that. And then your husband might have his own office or a room that is his, and then he can do it in his spring colours. Yeah,
so you almost have your own place to go and be where you need to be.
Yeah, but there will always be a crossover, because quite often, I mean, we always hear with couples, opposites attract, because a couple will be giving each other what the other one lacks. You know, it's that kind of
the yin and yang sort of thing. Yeah.
And so every time I've worked with a couple, I've always seen a connection. Now there will sometimes be a compromise, but who can live with that? So the compromise would be that maybe you go to the lighter end of autumn, so that your husband feels a connection and he thinks, actually, yes, I can live with this.
Yeah. Or
you might turn around and say, do you know what? If we do the colour palette in spring, I'm okay with that. Because everyone has to live with it and live with it comfortably. And is there another space that you can then create a bit more of your own? So there is compromises, but not compromising to the point where it's detrimental.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think what I would say was I'm the interior stylist. That usually goes down quite well, you can imagine. So when it comes to clothing, what I found really interesting was you were saying about using colour, and that red makes women feel more attractive to men. So even if you just put red lipstick on, men are attracted to it, and the way they talk to passion kind of pulls them in, and it's something as simple as lipstick can do that.
Yes, so red is the colour. Now, there is no such thing as a gender colour. No,
Yeah, that was really interesting about the pink and the blue.
So the whole thing about gender neutral colours, well, there is no such thing. But colours do have an energy. So red is the colour with a masculine energy, because men and women, we both have masculine energy. Because it's the colour of the physical, so it stimulates the physical. So when you are surrounded by red, you're likely to move more, you're likely to be more energized, they're all physical reactions. So men are very attracted to red. And when they see, and there's been many studies, when they see a woman wearing red and then one wearing not red, and there's studies, they've always gone for the woman wearing red. In fact, somebody told me, and I thought it was just brilliant. she went on a speed dating, and one of the conditions was no woman was allowed to wear red lipstick because it was seen as giving a disproportionate or like an unfair advantage. So because then every man would find that woman attractive. Yes.
Wow.
It's because we see red first, and men are very drawn and physically drawn, and there is that rush of excitement and that rush of lust, of passion, which is very subconscious. But they are drawn to that.
I think we'll spot that now. And if we want to, if you're going on a date with your husband or something, you'll probably be more likely to wear a bit more red.
Yeah, racy red, sexy underwear.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not there without there being a reason. You know, there's a reason behind it.
So I looked at your website, obviously doing my research, and I had no idea quite how much you've got going on there. So the book is exciting enough as it is, but you have a whole movement coming, and you do workshops, and you have is it a colour club? Tell me some stuff about, or tell our audience about some of the things that you've got in the pipeline with your website.
Yeah, so thelittlebookofcolour.com.
Yeah.
So with this book, I really wanted to create a movement. I really wanted to create something that was bigger than me, that would take on a life of its own. And the fact that this book is going to be published currently in 12 different languages, which I'm absolutely thrilled about.
Straight off the bat.
Straight off the That wasn't the first draft, by the way.
Wow.
Before I'd cottoned on to the essence of the book as in coming home, obviously all these countries saw something in the book, maybe even before I saw it, but they saw that this was something different. So yeah, 12 countries have already, different languages I should say, have bought this, which I was thrilled about, because I always knew I wanted to create a paradigm shift. I wanted people to really fall back in love with colour, to not be scared of it, because I couldn't understand really why something that is so fundamental to our lives, you know, we're so connected to nature, but why are we so disconnected? Why do we live such urban lives that we are surrounding ourselves with grey, with black, with white? Clearly, if that is in your colour palette, it supports you, but for the majority of us, it doesn't. So why were we going into nature and spending time in nature? Why is it that every single immersive colour experience is sold out, especially in London, around the world? People go and do exhibitions on colour, and they're accused of people, but then they go home and then living devoid of colour and scared of colour. So I thought, how can we really create something that people will fall in love with colour again?
Yeah.
So that's
take action.
Yeah. So that's why with this book I really wanted to create this movement and create something that would have a life of its own. And very much like, I think back in I don't even know if it was in the 80s or whatever, when Bill Gates said there's going to be a computer on every person's desk. And this is when there was all big, massive mainframes, and I'm going, really?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he had a dream that even he didn't know how it was going to happen. And that's the kind of dream that I have with this book, is I don't know how it's going to happen, and I don't have to know. I just know that if this book gets out, that I want as many people to fall in love and not only embrace colour. And it does not mean to be Disneyland on acid. It doesn't mean that you walk around like a kaleidoscope and you look like you've just had every colour thrown up on you. That is absolutely not. It is about showing up who you are. So the soft, gentle, serene summer types are going to be in lavenders and heathers and shades of grey and beautiful, those soft colours, because a woman who has that personality, she absolutely glows in that. Someone who is an autumn, they look amazing. You know what I mean? Like if you wear the colours that are and the design style that is you, you wear less makeup because you just absolutely glow. You're glowing from the inside out. You're showing up authentically, and the confidence that you get, and there is nothing more beautiful than a confident woman. You know, that is beauty, isn't it? Because it's the inner beauty. We have been sold such a myth that if we buy this colour and this makeup and this lipstick and this and whatever, it will make us feel better. That's all external. That's all, if I buy this, I will be happier.
Yeah.
Instead of let's come from within and showing up who we really are. So that's really what this movement is. But to support people on that, because I really want people to live the book, is why I'm starting something that's called the Colour Club. And I'm going to possibly be starting that early next year. People join that. It's a monthly membership, but we go through the book and there's lots of exercises and lots of colour challenges, and there's lots of extra information that I've developed since I've written this. All sorts of files and I'm going to have a far more in-depth personality test in there, because there's only so much I could have in the book. And that's really for people to come together from all over the world and to create this community where people feel supported, and they've got me to, to talk things through and to ask questions, and really just anyone that might feel that they're a little bit left out or a little bit alone, and they've picked up the book and they go, well, I get this, but how do I even start?
Yeah, and also I think from conversations I've had at home, people don't get how I enjoy colour. It's good to have someone you can talk to who gets it.
Yeah.
Someone else who's passionate about colour in the same way that you are. It's you're building a colour community where people don't have it in everyday life.
No, that's what I mean. That's why before this podcast, you and I were probably talking for about an hour or more.
Yeah, I'm quite good at talking.
All about our love of colour. So it's when you're with a whole group of people that love the same thing that you do, then you don't feel like you're alone.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's brilliant. I can't wait. So you're going to start that next year. So I will, whenever you're ready and it's launching, just let me know and I will share it with everyone so they can go and find out about it.
That's generous.
I'll be at the top of that list. So my next and final question is, what's next?
What's next? Well, I think
that is what's next.
I think that is what's next.
And book 2, right? Okay.
So I've already got an idea for a couple of books. But I just want to get this off.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been out 4 weeks. I'll give you a breather, but maybe next month. Okay.
Yeah. So get this off the ground, get this moving, get the Colour Club up and running, because I want to really be of service. And then do in-person colour course, because I'm being asked all the time. So when are you going to do a course?
Yeah.
So have those all organised. I'm also going to be in Australia in December and January. So there's just a lot. Yeah. There's a lot going on, but there's lots of other talks and things I'm doing between.
You've been doing lots of panels and all sorts. So
panel discussions.
So if people wanted to find out what you were doing or where you were speaking and everything, is that follow Instagram?
Yes. Also in the little Book of Colour website, there is a
pull down menu.
Well, there's something they're called top navigation. That's the word. Yeah. Called events. So I put all the events in there. They can see where I am, where I'm going to be talking, and where I'm doing panel discussions, or where I'm doing book signings, or courses and things. It's all up on that list.
Brilliant. I will share that in the show notes. Also, if people want to follow you on Instagram, you're at Karen_Holler_colour. But again, I will share all that in the show notes.
Show notes, that sounds cool.
I know.
What are they?
So basically, when the podcast goes live, people can find it on my website, on Inside Stylist, and then it links through to anything we've mentioned. I will link back through. So
I don't even know how. That's all.
So it's all good. Yeah.
Amazing stuff. I wouldn't even know how to do all that.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's
been brilliant.
I hope
you think you're going home now, don't you?
No, I'm sure. I've
got more talking to do.
There's a lot to carry on after this.
That's been amazing.
And after your cat is obviously having a nice chew on my fingers.
He was very good. He's much better behaved than the dog ever is.
Did you enjoy that? Yes.
Well, thank you, Karen. That's been amazing.
Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylist podcast. You can find all the details from today's episode over in the show notes on insidestylist.com. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you would head on over to iTunes and rate and review it. It's the best way to help other people find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.